Good evening. I'd like to call the Government Operations Committee to order. Can I please have roll call?
Burball?
Here.
Bessner?
Here.
Weber?
Here.
Stokaitis?
Here.
Foltz?
Here.
Bongard?
Here.
Munns? Here. Kim?
Here.
Lencioni?
Here.
Petrella?
Here.
Wonderful. We have nothing for omnibus tonight. One thing I wanted to make mention of is item 7A. Per Chief Keegan, we're going to remove that from the agenda for tonight. He's still getting some verification on some language, so that one's not going to be on the agenda tonight. With that being said, I'll start us off with item 5A. Derek has a presentation, draft of the downtown parking study. Go ahead, Derek.
Good evening. So first, this is just going to be a brief presentation. Staff thought it would be important to at least put this in front of City Council before a budget meeting that will be held next week. Our consultant will still be coming in to be doing a full presentation, perhaps in February if things go smoothly. So this is just going to be a quick update, which is essentially that the consultant has completed the draft study, which is now available for public viewing and comment. What that study includes is a parking inventory, occupancy data, existing conditions report, public comments, public survey, anything anyone said in the focus groups is also included if you're interested in that, kind of an analysis of future development, and then of course recommendations. Just a reminder of the public engagement process, we did have focus groups, 2 public open houses, a business survey, and a community survey. We are not done with that. If you do go to our website and look under City Studies and Initiatives, you'll find the webpage that has everything for our parking study, including a current study, our current survey that anyone can take right now. And then we are also going to have an additional public open house next Tuesday from 4:30 to 6:30. The consultant will be here to answer any questions and take any comments. And then, of course, whenever the study is kind of finalized, this would go through one of our committees and then on to City Council for acceptance. So, of course, the public could have additional comments at that time. So I'm just going to kind of give an overview of each one of these sections. The first one would be the parking inventory. So they did go through and look at our downtown and look at what parking we had available. We have 2,071 parking spaces in total. A majority of that is off-street parking, so we have 20 public parking surface lots, 3 parking garages. About 75% of all of our parking is off-street parking. And I know throughout this study, one of the big topics was kind of what's on the west side, what's on the east side of the river. A majority of our parking is on the west side. Again, you know, in the neighborhood of about 75% of our parking is on the west side as opposed to the east side. Looking at the occupancy data, the first thing I want to recognize is what is practical capacity, and the definition of this is in the draft study. So what this means is what is that level where we're practically at capacity for a particular lot. And what they indicate is that 85%, that's practical capacity for not just the lot, but for our downtown. That means that if someone is looking for a parking space, once you get to that level, all of a sudden it kind of becomes a little bit more it becomes harder for someone to find a parking space. And they may leave that lot, go to another lot. It just becomes a little bit more difficult. So that's kind of the threshold that you want to stay under in order to have a good parking experience. I don't think with any surprise the parking study found that we really only have a parking difficulty on Friday and Saturday nights. You know, during the week we don't really have any occupancy issues. What they found was that on average for our occupancy data, and this is when they literally went around in the downtown, I think on 3 weekend nights, and basically counted all the cars on street and off street just to get to that occupancy number, and they found that on average we were about 80% occupied. So this means that we are under that practical capacity, which is where we want to be. I think a lot of the people who visit the downtown and the businesses, they feel like that's probably low, and that's understandable. And what I think it is that it's where people go first to find their parking spaces. Those are usually full. It's really the perimeter of our downtown where you can still find parking. So if you look at the map over here of our downtown on the right-hand side, that is included in the study. What is shaded in orange, those are lots that are considered to be above that 85% threshold. So those are above practical capacity. But if you look, to the, lot P and U and N, some of these other ones that are a little bit further from the downtown, we are under the practical capacity there. So that's where we kind of want to be directing people, and there are spots available. So the narrative is that our downtown is very busy. Our consultant didn't say, oh, don't worry, you don't have any problems at all. It is a very busy downtown. They acknowledge that. But visitors just may not be able to find their first or maybe even their second option, and they may just have to park a little bit further, even though there is parking that exists. Other existing conditions that are in the report, and this isn't all of them, but I just thought that these were worth mentioning because the consultant observed them or they were gathered in public engagement quite a bit. One, the city does not charge for parking. That, of course, came up as an idea, and if that would be beneficial or not. I'll just say right now that that was not popular in public engagement. People did not like that as a concept. The city also does not strictly enforce time restriction limits. That doesn't mean that our police department doesn't do anything. If there is someone that maybe they're parked 4 hours in a 2-hour lot, they may get away with it. If someone's parked there for days, of course, our police department takes care of that. But we do not have a full-time person that goes around and, will give someone a ticket if they are extending their time. So theoretically, someone could be in the downtown for, we'll say, 8 hours parked in a 4-hour lot. That sometimes goes unnoticed. A big theme was just inadequate and unclear wayfinding signage. There is signage throughout the downtown, but I think that it's changed over the years, and now we don't have a cohesive wayfinding signage plan. And then the 5-level parking deck, of course, came up quite a bit. I will just flip back to the former slide and look at the map. The yellow there, that's what we called Lot I. That was under practical capacity. I know that when they were doing the occupancy counts and I went around the downtown and looking at all these lots, the first four floors of the deck are actually pretty full, but once you get to the top level, there were a lot of empty stalls. But one of the difficulties with the parking garage was that it's difficult to navigate. And that is for people who are driving into the deck, but then also once you get out of your car, finding your way down to First Street or our plaza that is over there. And part of this is because of the elevator situation, and they do have some recommendations that how the city could address that to make that a little bit better. One of it just being signage, some of it would be infrastructure changes. The study does also contemplate and look at some of our future developments. Those developments would be, of course, the Whole Foods, River East Lots, River 504, Lot 4, Building 8, the Baker Church, and then the former police department site. I'm not going to go through all of these in depth right now, but essentially the study goes through each one of them and kind of outlines, what the impact would be on our downtown parking supply and experience for our visitors. The study also does include in this section, just for unknown developments that may occur, kind of an estimated parking ratios, and that's kind of what you see as Table 15 on the right-hand side. So just as an example, if we do have a new restaurant that is going to be built, it kind of gives an idea of how many parking spaces that restaurant would need in order to kind of meet demand. So for a restaurant, it says about 17.4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. So if it's a 2,000 square foot restaurant, the parking demand would be around the neighborhood of 35 parking spaces. I will say right now that, this is kind of optimal if you can fit those parking spaces in that area. What happens a lot in all downtowns, not just this downtown, but literally all over the country, is that downtowns are really tightly packed, and it's just not possible to get to that number. And then that's when those developments end up relying a little bit more on the public parking supply, like the garages that we have built in the downtown. And then the really interesting part, which is the findings and recommendations section. They did come up with about 10 recommendations in total. There are some other smaller ones that are built into that. I'm just going to highlight 3 of them. The wayfinding signage improvements, that's something that we think is relatively easy to do and also badly needed, just having a cohesive design throughout the downtown. Parking space availability signs in the parking garages, specifically the 5-level deck. So a lot of people would not like to even try to go into the deck because I didn't even know if there was going to be parking that is available. So I do have a picture on the right-hand side. This was in the study. It's just an example of what this could look like if we could have some type of counter system to show on each level what level is full. If there were, 50 spaces available on the top floor, that may encourage people to take the journey to the top if they knew they were going to find a parking space. And then there has also been an idea thrown out there if there is a way to connect that to some type of app. So if I am going to eat in the downtown, I want to know where to park. Hey, is there availability in the parking deck? I could go online or I could go on the app and see that. Shared parking potential. There are numerous parking lots that are privately owned in our downtown that could be public parking eventually. I think that the study actually indicated that there are about 450 parking spaces that are privately owned. The city could approach all those owners and try to come up with some type of agreement to let those be utilized for public parking, at least on Friday and Saturday nights. We do actually think that would be very effective, and that would actually increase our parking supply. The one thing I did want to mention on this is that the consultant did not indicate that we needed to increase our parking supply by adding another deck. However, they did put in the study kind of what are those parameters should be, location of where it should be, where we have the biggest parking problem in our downtown, and then also looking at property, what size should the property be in order for the parking deck, if we so choose to do one, what is the size that would be optimal. Moving forward, again, we have a community survey that is active right now on our website. I think we're going to do some social media posts to get it a little bit out there. We have a public meeting next week, and then, of course, the committee and city council acceptance. We currently are expecting the consultant to come to the committee level, and he can answer questions as well. But that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions right now, or I can convey them back to the consultant if needed.
Thank you very much, Derek. Do we, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, the shared parking potential, are those places, those businesses mainly on the east side or on the west side? Do they vary?
They actually did separate those from the east side and the west side, and it looks like of the 11, 7 are on the west side, and 4 of them are on the east side.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
Actually, thanks for teeing that up, Mark. Regarding that too, have we had any preliminary discussion, or is it just discussion? I mean, have we talked to them, and has there been any pushback?
I have reached out to some of them to indicate whether they're interested, and yeah, but of course it gets complicated because now when that becomes a public lot, it's about the maintenance. Now it's going to be utilized a lot more. Is the city going to contribute to the maintenance of that lot? So it's not as simple as just an agreement. Hey, we can use this. There's details to work out. So, but we have actually got some lukewarm feedback that would be doable.
And then one other thing, regarding that survey, so I'm looking at the website right now. Is it possible to maybe put that on the main page? Because you have to go through a couple clicks. I went there today. Okay. And you mentioned you will be doing some social media as well. Okay.
Yeah, we can. And
if we're trying to increase participation, I think, I don't know, that's just a recommendation. Yeah. Can we do that, or?
I think we can make that happen.
Cool.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I just want to first say that this was really comprehensive. I read through the study a couple times, so thank you for making that available. Just to clarify, you said the 400 and something spaces were private spaces, but some of those are actually public, right?
I guess you're all right. There are some of them, I'm talking about like the library. They are public, but
library and school district.
Right. So those can be utilized, but we kind of need a formal agreement for them to be utilized by someone who's not a patron of those establishments.
Right. I just wanted to make it clear that those are still taxpayer-owned spaces, and we would need to have some kind of intergovernmental agreement to allow for public parking on them during off hours, right? Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
Could you help me understand the process from where we're at right now to how we expect to put the information that's in here into use and some of the outcomes. I know that there are suggestions and different ideas that are recommendations, but we're going to, this is a draft version. So if you understand my question, go ahead and take it on.
Yeah, I think that, I did share this with the other departments, and I kind of got feedback from them of which recommendations they thought were most feasible and most impactful and honestly could be implemented sooner. I don't want to get too far ahead of us and kind of go through those now because we're still in this community engagement phase where we're getting more information. The survey that we have out right now, that's really what it's aimed to. I'm not expecting that survey to necessarily make huge dramatic changes to the study, but that is going to be given to council and say this is what the community thinks is going to be the most impactful. So looking at those recommendations, I kind of see it as a phased plan where, there's some things that we could potentially at least start this year, but then others are going to be maybe a few years down the road. But, I think that where we're at now is a fine place, but with the future development, we do need to start implementing some of these recommendations, immediately. Did that answer your question? Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Derek, thanks for your presentation. So you mentioned something, parking is available on the outskirts. So when I look, what's really interesting was when I look at the surveys from the residents and the businesses, one of the main issues or biggest concerns is the inconvenient distances from the destinations. That comes from residents and businesses. So when we talk about, well, yeah, there's parking available on the outskirts, how do you achieve that goal of getting patrons to go there and walk 4, 5, 6 blocks? And I find that very challenging. You can't force someone to go. They have choices, right? So when I look at the survey, it says, well, how do visitors go downtown? It says 91% go by car. So that tells me we're still kind of a commuter city to get around to where we need to be. So while I understand, and this is obviously a question more for Desmond, and maybe they can prepare to answer it when they come next month, is how do they, let's say we have an agreement with the library, how do they intend on encouraging someone that parks in the library to walk from there to go to Zaza's? Yeah. Those are the things that I want to know, because I know in the past, a year ago, we talked about potentially removing on-street parking on Riverside or Walnut Avenue on the east side, on the southeast quadrant, which is extremely tight. So I find it very, very hard with this data to justify removing any on-street parking in the southeast quadrant or anywhere, quite frankly, until there's a solid alternative in place that addresses the survey, because at the end of the day, the patrons are going to decide where they're going to park. We can put parking wherever we want, right? So these are things I'd like Desmond to answer. So on the west side, I read through the study, and it doesn't have any mention really about a solution for the 5th floor shenanigans that's been going on for years. Our police department's doing a great job trying to manage that situation with the resources they have, but is that a long-term sustainable practice to use our resources to pretty much manage that issue? So I would like for them to come up with a solution for the 5th floor nonsense that's going on with the drifting and drag racing or whatever else is happening there. So I got a lot of stuff I can talk about, but I understand this is a draft, so certainly they're going to come back, and I'll have a lot of questions for them in the future. So. Okay.
I can try to at least address the first one there. I think one of the recommendations is to improve alternative transportation options. So this did get tied in with our pedestrian bike plan. So, I think even we put a rendering of something from the ped bike plan, which shows kind of islands on 64, which, that's a big barrier. People had indicated that they do not want to cross 64. I mean, north of City Hall, we have lots that were not full, right? Sure. And they don't want to cross 64 to go to places like Arcata, the Arcata or Flagship. So if we can make it easier for families to do that walk, we want to do it. Now, that is a big ask. I mean, that's in the ped bike plan, but that's working with IDOT. We don't even know if it's possible, but it's something that we can explore and it wouldn't be something that would be implemented, this year or even next year. It's going to take time to do that. But I think what you're getting as people, there's not going to be really an option to increase our parking supply in the core of the downtown. We already have a parking deck that, is underutilized. So we have to make people feel more comfortable with walking.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, but until those alternatives are implemented with improving our walkability, bikeability, I don't think, it even says here, it could impact adjacent residents in neighborhoods around it. When you remove on-street or you put paid parking, they're going to push it up into the neighborhoods and have a negative impact on that. So that's my goal, is not to create a negative quality of life experience for the residents in the adjacent neighborhoods. So when it comes to on-street parking, in my opinion, according to the data here, I think it's pretty solid that it needs to be maintained until the alternatives are in place.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
Just your question.
Go ahead, Ed.
Derek, thank you again. And quick question on that first slide you showed a difference of like 1,400 parking spots on the west side, and I think it was 600. And so there you go on the east side. Is that a typical ratio that's been going on for a while? I know some of this is probably development driven, but do you know, like in the last 10, 15, 20 years, if that balance is about the same?
You mean specifically for St. Charles?
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't look at that historically. I will say that as far as the inventory goes, I'm not quite sure if it's changed. We'd have to look at that. But I will say that, we have had a lot of businesses that have opened up on our east side, which have,
see if that's going to change.
made it more busy over there.
A little bit more drastically.
Yeah.
And then the second question, regarding charged parking, like for a lot, versus more strict monitoring of the amount of time a car can stay in a parking space or a lot. I'm not suggesting we charge parking. Obviously, if you did, that's a control mechanism. To some degree, you can control how long a car can be in a spot, no matter what it is, whether it's street or whether it's a parking garage. But on the flip side of that, if we do have more strict monitoring, and I mean strict monitoring, whether it's 90 minutes, 2 hours, is that more costly? Is that doable? Is it harder to do? Is it a lot of maintenance? Or how do we, not only that, but what's the cost involved with that?
It certainly is doable. And I think the intent here is, we don't really want to issue tickets. We want to be friendly to visitors of the downtown. But at the same time, if we do kind of have a little bit of a parking issue, some of those parking spaces are being, used too long. So if we want to do some type of enforcement, one, that's a policy that, perhaps, council along with staff, we need to say, hey, we want to be a little bit stricter with this so that we create that turnover. And if we do want to do that, what the study does contemplate is incorporating automatic license plate recognition technology. So we actually do already have some of this around the city, but it's stationary. So I think there actually is one in the 5-story deck so we can read people's license plates. And we can actually attach those to our police vehicles where they could just drive around and say, okay, that car's been there for 6 hours and they're a 2-hour lot. I can give them a ticket. That is probably the most effective way that we would do that, rather than hiring people to walk around and you can't chalk tires anymore. That's not allowed. So that would be the cost of it, or that would be what we would do. And I forget if the study did contemplate or did put in the price under that. I can't find it right now, but I think they did identify a cost that they thought it would be, and I know that the police department was interested in that. I think that the cars that they have actually can accommodate that technology.
Okay, thank you, Dick.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Why do they say 85% is close to capacity? Why not say 100? 99.
Yeah, so obviously, if 100% capacity, you're going to be, that's going to be an issue. They just feel that in their experience, that's when people who are visiting an area start to get frustrated and ask themselves, is it worth it to go to that place if I'm going to have trouble finding a parking space? They did tell us that there are other companies that say 90% is where that is at, but they come in with 85, and that's just their own metric that they have come up with of where they feel comfortable.
So it's subjective. So it's not, you know, concrete. It's not, we're at 100%. To me, that sets an unrealistic expectation for a body like this to try and figure out how you're going to fit a Whole Foods and a police department property redevelopment when you're going to set a bar from a consultant at 85% when you now got to go find more spaces where we already agreed that the downtown space is pretty tight to begin with. So, but what I'm hearing is that's subjective. It's, you know, Mark's consulting agency could say 97.5, and if we go with that, then we go with that. So there's not anything hard and fast.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily an industry standard. I think that's just what our consultants, the number that they feel comfortable with, I guess.
Okay. And then for the survey, how many people responded to the survey?
390.
So 390 people, what percentage of those can we see what percentage of those people who live in town or from St. Charles versus not?
We did ask them by zip code.
And what was the weight?
That I'm not going to know offhand, but that's something that we can share.
What I'm worried about with this study is it's a study, it's a snapshot in time, and how we're making decisions about where we want to go in 2024 and beyond with parking, knowing you've got the potential opportunity to do some exciting things that are going to need parking. And are we making sure that we're hearing from the entire room? And 300 is great, but if we know on a given weekend 50%, 45% of the people who are going down there are not from St. Charles, you know, so are we saying that wayfinding and signage improvements are for people who live in town and don't know where to go?
I think it's for people who are coming from out of town.
Yeah, so I appreciate the study. I think it's a good first step. There's a lot of holes. I think Brian made a good comment. I mean, I think we could probably peel this thing apart, but I feel like there's a lot here, and some of it doesn't seem to totally click together. I'm really curious about if, you know, can we see a parking projection or, you know, more concrete, when you do this or if council moves forward with this, here's how it's going to impact, because some of these things don't seem to click.
Yeah, identifying what the parking saving per implementation is going to be, you know, hard to do. What they do recommend is, now that we kind of have the framework for taking these occupancy surveys, is that every year staff can go out and do some type of we complete 3 of these recommendations. Now we're going to go out and do occupancy counts on our own and see if we made a dent in this. So.
Jamie, do you have another question or no?
I just wanted to mention, just from reading the report, that it's actually saying that we're at 80%, not 85%. So we're actually below, not at the threshold. So it's not saying that we're above. And it does say in the report that there are some options for moving people. So it's not, when you say that there's, that people are going to be pushed to the residential streets and they're going to have to walk all these blocks, what the report was suggesting was that shuttles could be utilized, perhaps having employees and business owners shuttled, because those are some of those cars that are in the downtown area, taking up those spaces for great deals of time, having those parking on the perimeter, being shuttled from somewhere like the library, for example, or the library area, not to pick on the library specifically, but it's one of the furthest out in that area. So I don't know if it's representative necessarily to say that it's not providing solutions for that.
I think that those are good points, but you can't force a business to shuttle somebody from Charlestown Mall to Eden Restaurant. You can't force, you know what I'm saying? I like the idea. I get what you're saying. I think the trolley's a cool idea. It's been talked about for years in the past, but it's never gone. I'm open to any alternative suggestions. But we have to remember people have options. We're competing with surrounding communities, and it even says in this report, if they get frustrated, they leave and they go somewhere else, and they have a choice. And I think it's important that until we come up with viable alternatives, we need to maintain as much on-street and off-street parking in the core of our downtown, especially where they have that map where they say that, you know, the weekends, that's where the most activity is. So I get your point. I think they're great points, but I think they sound good on paper, but when you try and put them in reality and tell somebody at Vintage 53, hey, you're all getting on a bus from Charlestown Mall or the library, you're going to go to, I don't see that happening. I just don't. But good point. I get it. I'm open to looking at alternatives.
Hey, Derek, is there a chance that we can, and I know these aren't going to be answers you may know, but that when we do have questions when Desmond come to be like, hey, how much could this cost if this were implemented in like all of our city lots or something like that? Because you mentioned something about like an app that can show like, hey, there's so many parking spaces here, there's so many parking spaces in this lot if somebody was coming to town. Is that something they could provide a number for us when they come, or?
The cost of those things?
Well, like if it said like on the 5-story deck, there's so many spaces in here, but to have one of those on every city lot. So if somebody were to coming into town, they know where Zaza's is, I'm just picking Zaza's because, and they know the location, and they could pull up on the app and be like, okay, this lot, a block down, right now has this many spaces based on what the app says. Is that viable? Is it not? Is that a Desmond question? Is it?
I think they would be supportive of that. As far as the costs go to it, we can ask them about that, and I think what we would want to do is we would just want to start with the 5-level parking deck, see how that goes, and then if it's great, people love it, and it's effective, then we could maybe keep expanding it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Taking a look at this, I think it's a great start. And the reason that I asked my first question is like, how do you, like, at what point are we going to hear different things and how do we go through? Because when I take a look at this, there's some things that I see in here that I felt like I needed to interpret, but to interpret them right now, there's two ways that I think about this. Like, you know, what's available, you know, and what do we need to address, and where we have opportunities and requirements for leadership. You know, like, because it says we should encourage. Well, what does that mean? You know, and going into ideas and things that I didn't hear about, like I said, you know, one, there's a few spots and it says that we're using our parking inappropriately. We have spots, you know, where they're not being used. Well, so with that, encourage people. Okay, so how do we market to get people in the right spots? And then once we do, what kind of an impact will that have? You know, so I've been talking a long time. We need to change behavior patterns and traffic patterns to get people comfortable using the 5th floor, because we have a ton of spots up there. And then what impact does that make? You know, inappropriate use of parking. You know, there are, you know, like long-term customer parking, short-term customer parking, and then you have employee and car storage. So, you know, with that, when we talk about like car storage, you know, how do we address some of those things? And because I'm hearing things, and why I was asking is because I'm hearing things that sound a lot like policy, you know, and like taking a stand. I don't think we know anything yet, you know. I mean, what I see is a lot of opportunity up here, and I'd like to, you know, move forward and listen to this without talking about policy, about, you know, we need to build this. You know, in our first conversation, we were saying, I'm not going to remove parking. We need to build parking. I think that that's appropriate. I want to hear more about, you know, the things that we can do that will create more parking opportunities and how they will affect us, you know, because I don't think that we have enough on here to start talking about policy. And I want to, you know, get to the part where we start getting like a back and forth as we're starting to choose, you know, what are the things that we can do right now when it says, you know, encourage people. What does that mean? You know, because I think one of the things that's a missed opportunity is with off-site parking to put together programs that encourage, you know, in peak times, let's do everything that we can to get employees, people that we have, you know, a greater amount of connection with, you know, ability to influence where they're parking. Okay, I don't see any of that in there, and we still need to talk about what kind of these policies are acceptable to, you know, the different communities, our business owners down here. So that's just the one thing, is because I'm excited about this. I want to hear more, but I really don't think it's appropriate for us to start talking about policy at this stage of the game and do more listening and explore this further. So I'm looking forward to those conversations, but we'll all hold our horses up here before we say what this means and what it does. Is that fair? Yes. Thank you.
I would just like to add, obviously, the consulting group, they don't know our town like we know our town. They're doing their jobs, they're counting, putting together what they think are options for us. Obviously, we're going to have lots more dialogue on this next week when they have the open house. When would we expect to aggregate some of that data and then come back to this committee again and have more discussions?
Yeah, I was planning on having the open house next week and then having the community survey open for maybe 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
So it could be as early as February, planning and development, where we could come back together and kind of share what was learned.
Okay, because I definitely want to have opportunity for all the data to come in, and have more open discussion up here and have more back and forth, even before Desmond even comes again. Like, I want us to be, have more structured, identified things that we're trying to achieve before we engage them again.
Okay.
Does everyone agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. I think that is, we do this a lot. We lean on studies, and studies come back and they're not completely black and white. There's some gray. It can be subjective. You might look at this and say, these are some of the same recommendations we've heard time and again. Signage, people don't know where to go. But if you just ask the question, does St. Charles have a parking problem? You'll probably get 10 different answers up here. And I'm not interested in trying to change that today. What I'm more interested in is trying to answer questions from a development perspective of how to Brian and David's point, which are very good points. How do you balance some of the development you want to do in that downtown space with people who've lived there for 20, 30 years? It's a great point. But that's where I'm more interested in a study like this, is more of a projection, because if you ask me if we have a parking problem, we do not. We have a problem where people know where to go if they're not from here, or people getting frustrated where they want to be here, but they have to park across the river and then they go somewhere else. Well, that's a choice, But I think, Mr. Chairman, your point's spot on. Like, we need more black and white where it's a study, it's a good first step, but it shouldn't be a barrier, because I don't want us to be unwilling to look at the things that we want to be able to potentially do because of parking, because we're scared we may go over an 85 or 80% threshold.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, David.
Just two. I'm sorry. Again, thanks for all this information. I agree with you, Steve, and Ryan as well. I mean, obviously, I don't really think that we were advocating for a specific policy. I think they're just throwing out some ideas based on the data. I mean, how much did we spend for this? $45,000?
45.
So, I mean, I think it gave some pretty good information for 45 grand, and we need more. I think that needs to be said, but I'm just curious about the electric vehicle charging stations. Like, I read the report. Other than just convenience, because apparently, like, there's more out there, is there any other rationale that they put that as a recommendation? Is it going to help in some capacity? Or?
No, I don't necessarily think that's a recommendation to improve our parking.
Just for convenience,
it's
right?
Really, that is the future.
Right.
We already have one, but they're going to be, private businesses are going to be implementing them.
Right.
And there's just a big push nationally to have those more available.
And, I mean, there's going to be incentives and other stuff going on. I mean, so probably this low-hanging fruit is something that, and you didn't highlight it, so it's not something that is really on your radar. Not that, I mean, I think they're interesting. We have some, right, in our First Street?
We do have on the fourth floor of the parking deck.
So anyway, I'm just curious about that. And then, are you aware, you came from another municipality, or both aware, or familiar with, of course. Is there any other municipality that's similar in our size where any sort of metered parking has been anywhere successly whatsoever that you know of?
Describe successful. I mean,
like, people aren't, like, it doesn't, well, it says, there's no negative impact on neighboring areas, there's no resident complaints.
It usually results in a lot of complaints.
Right. Okay.
It is successful in getting turnover.
Right. Oh, I can imagine.
in places where it's very congested and you want people to move along, it's good for that. So.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Quick question. How did the construction of the First Street Plaza impact their study? So if business was down 20, 30% in that general area, how did they take that into consideration with the study?
Yeah, so I think in any given year in our downtown, we are going to have something that is not, we're not going to have an ideal year. If we would have done this the prior year, we wouldn't have known about the Whole Foods, we wouldn't have known about the plaza. If we would have done it next year, you know, that the parking lot in front of what will be Whole Foods is going to be under construction. So there's really not an ideal year. I think, yeah, acknowledging that, you know, okay, maybe there was some less people in the downtown because of the construction, but every year you're going to have 20 curveballs, honestly.
Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Derek.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation by Penny with the review draft design of the new city website, just for information only.
Pull up mine for a second. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to give you a summary of the work that has been done so far on the city's website redesign, as well as show you the design and solicit feedback before the design is finalized. So to kind of refresh everyone's memory, back in May of last year of 23, the City Council approved the expenditure for Phase 1 of our public engagement platform project. And as you can see, there's 3 phases. The current phase that we're on, obviously, is Phase 1, which involves the consolidation and replacement of our websites, as well as initiating some online forms and underlying workflows that will work with those forms, as well as improving our communication capabilities. Some of the work we've done so far is over the summer we released 2 surveys. One was to the public about what they would like to see on a website, what they like on the current site but might need to be improved, as well as a survey similar topics to employees. We gathered analytic data from the use of our existing sites. We gathered some basic design elements. The city project team, which consists of at least one member from each department across the city, was tasked with identifying from the current website the content that we wanted to retain and move over to the new site. So that was quite a task. We've already went through 2 earlier rounds of design review and subsequent changes. So what you'll see is the 3rd round. It's not final yet, but we're gathering the feedback. And we also completed design reviews similar to what we're doing tonight with 4 other stakeholder groups. So we did the business dinner. We did a webinar with the public. We did one with employees, and then we also did one for business leaders. We're also currently in progress of soft launching our new city code site. So if you go to the main current city site and you click on the link for city code, it's refreshed, it's more searchable. All the links haven't been updated, individual links to that site, but it's available if you'd like to look at it. So in the summer, as I mentioned, and also the expenditure was with a company called Granicus, who is a partner for us to help us with the entire project. So they were the ones that hosted the community survey. They gave us a summary conclusion, which is what This is here. A couple of the items that I'd like to call out specifically were desires from the community for improvement. So they wanted to see improved menu drop-downs, interpreting that as maybe a better organization of those menus at the top. A lot of times, city or government websites are designed from a city staff perspective. We want to make it user-facing, easier for the users to use. It was noted in the surveys that our search is so comprehensive that a lot of times it returns so many results that it makes it almost unusable. So we want search to be a little more focused. We want to make the users' visits quick and easy. So that's one of our main objectives, to make things quick and easy. Also to reduce maybe a little bit of the government jargon that might be hidden in our sites at various places, and make common terminology more apparent. And then also just a more welcoming homepage. So before we get into the actual review, just a couple notes. The content that's in these examples is for demonstration purposes only. In fact, the sites haven't even been built yet. That was intentional because we wanted to get feedback on this design from all the stakeholder groups before the final design was approved. And then, once we get through the viewing of the different pieces of the site, suggestions, comments, feedback is welcome and encouraged. So a little bit about the color palette. So as everyone here is aware, we've got the primary colors of this teal and the red that's used in our logo. But we also have some accent colors. So we've got some secondary and primary accent colors. And we've tried to use some of those secondary colors to freshen up our image a little bit. So I'll hopefully remember to point those out when I see them. And then we gathered some photos that provide a pleasing image of the city and provided all those to grant. So with that, I'm going to switch modes here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the site as a whole. And then I'm going to go back to the presentation and call out the components on here. But I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like as a whole. Let me see if I can shrink this down a little bit. So I'm just going to scroll through this just to give you an idea of what it looks like all together. I'll go through that again a little bit slowly. And then I'm going to go back to the presentation and then go through some of the components that are actually made up here. So we will still have navigation menus, but they'll probably be organized a little bit better, again, with the intent of making it user-focused as opposed to maybe staff-focused. The search will be a little more focused as well. So there'll be searches in multiple places on the site. So this particular search will search the content of the site. But for example, if you go to the new code site, that search is just going to return city code results from that search. To make things, again, quick and easy for a user to come and either find the information they're looking for or to complete a task that they need to do, these task buttons are going to be right there up at the top. I know I said that the content that I'm showing you is all demonstration. Other than these buttons right here, these were developed based on analytics from our current site. So the things that people have visited the current site to do or see or find. So unless, I hear feedback otherwise from anyone else, these will be the top task buttons that we launch with. It's not to say they can't be changed, because they can in the future, but these are the ones that we're looking to implement with. So in moving down the site, again, in the intent of making things fast, if someone's coming to actually do something, so I want to do something, they'll be able to use the drop-down and choose what they want to do. In this particular example, it's they want to pay something. So once they choose pay, it's going to say, okay, well, these are the things that you can pay. In this example, it's pay a parking ticket. So it'll say, you know, give a little description of what that means, and then give them the buttons then to go to the place where they can pay their parking ticket. Then the next section is the meetings and events. So we'll have the ability to highlight one event with an image, a little larger footprint, as well as three other upcoming events, with the button to say, okay, I want to see all the events. So they'll go to a page and they'll see all the events that are coming up and meetings. Moving down, we'll be able to embed a video right there in the middle of the home page, and because of the prominent location, you know, it could be focused on a specific feature of the city or a particular project that we want to highlight, but it'll be right there. We'll have latest news. So again, similar to the meetings and events, we'll have one that we can highlight with an image and a little bit bigger footprint, as well as 3 other news items, and then a button to obviously go to see those and other news items. Moving down to the footer, we've got the ability to highlight 3 different things that might be happening within the city or things that we want people to know about, with the ability to click on those and find out additional information. Before I forget, here's an example of where we're pulling in some of those secondary colors. So we've got the light violet and the light blue. Also, you know, most of our work is guided by the strategic plan. So we wanted to make sure that that was readily accessible on the home page. So it's right here with a single click. It'll either go to a page or the document itself. There's high use functions, which we wanted available with a single click. So we can put those down here. And then finally, we've got a site map and an index. So a site map is similar to a table of contents in a book, where it's mostly by category, where an index is an alphabetical listing of topics on the site. So all that information that we just saw is responsive. So it's a responsive design, which means it will take that very same content and format it to fit on the dimensions of the device the person is using. So in this case, this is basically what the top of the home page would look like in a mobile device. Moving on, this is an example of an interior page, and again, this would be tiles to describe certain events or pieces of information we wanted to convey, either with a graphic or without. We've got a couple of the borders pulling in some of those additional secondary colors. This is another example of an interior page for either events or news. We can have the address of an event so that if the user clicks on it, it'll open Google Maps, and they'll be able to get directions and away they go. If it's a recurring event, we can show that. We can also, city staff can also add tags to that event so that searching is easier and better, similar with news. Another example of an interior page is an online forms launch. So we'll be able to create these pages where it's like a step-by-step. So step 1, step 2, step 3, kind of walking people through a process. We can have a tab that actually has the online form. We can also have a tab that if someone doesn't want to do an online form and they want to, you know, print out a PDF and bring it into the city office, they can do that as well. So it's whatever the user would prefer. So, as I said, we've done some design reviews. This is the fifth of 5. For the public and for the employees, presentations, we offered a survey at the end to gather feedback on what they thought. These are the average scores from those presentations on a 0 to 5 score, where it's completely disagree is 0 and a 5, completely agree is 5. So these are the average scores. The next steps then are to gather, we've already gotten feedback from the prior design reviews. I'm looking for feedback from you all. We'll take that feedback and we'll instruct Granicus on specific changes that we would like to the design. They'll take those and create a final design. Once the final design is approved, then they're going to go ahead and build the site out. The content that we identified from the current site that we wanted to be brought over will be pre-populated into that site. We'll also be building those online forms that we talked about with the underlying workflows. And we're also in the process of finalizing the templates for our communication platform, also part of Granicus. So in that case, users to either the new site, or we could actually launch it on our current site, can come and subscribe to certain topics that they're interested in, and as soon as new information is available on those particular topics, the site will notify them either with an email or a text. So that will allow us to replace MailChimp with our Granicus platform. So with that, are there any questions, feedback?
Penny, I have a question. Can you go back to the homepage? The first top of the homepage, they have like the 5 tabs top. Why is there not a one for business that says business? Is that under services?
No, so that will be economic development. And I probably should have mentioned, so Derek has been working with us as well to redevelop the Think St.Charles site. So the Think St.Charles site and the main site will all be running under the Granicus platform. And so that's sort of running concurrently, so I should have mentioned that.
So if I start off, if I have a business where I want to do a business in town, and I go to the homepage of City of St. Charles, how do I find business again? Where would it be?
Economic development, and we can change.
No, like where, I'm saying like, on
On the homepage that you're displaying.
I would click on economic development for business. Okay.
And again, you know, that's the feedback I'm looking for. That doesn't make sense, we can change.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I could bring that up. I don't know, something, you're probably thinking of something more like for business or something, literally just, yeah.
Just like the current homepage has 4 businesses on the far right-hand side of the homepage.
That's a good idea. But I have another thing too. So yeah, I would agree with that. But obviously economic, I think we should keep the economic development tab, but have a separate, like, new business or whatever, something that we have on our current page. But the one I'm interested in is that the interior sites. There was, like, for events, and if you mentioned this, I apologize. Is there an opportunity, like, if somebody clicks on an event, can they download it to their calendar? Is there something like that, like a functionality like that?
You know, we haven't actually started building that out, but I believe they did say that
Okay.
was possible.
I mean, that would be interesting to have. And then you also made a comment about some of the interior pages, like we might have pictures, and I think just as a matter of generality, like anytime and every time you have the opportunity to put a picture in rather than text, you should do that.
Well,
so.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, so like here, so the latest news or the meetings and events, the way this is formatted is that one of those meetings or events will be highlighted with an image.
Right. Okay. But there was another page where you had 3. There was 3, and you had like filler language. It was kind of gibberish, but it wasn't actual. Like, yeah, I think you mentioned. Yeah, no, there was another page. Maybe a couple scrolls. Sorry. Oh, each of these boxes is a slide. Yeah, oh, here it is. So these landing page examples, I can't really see on this monitor. I assume that's just filler. It's not actual language in there. Yeah, like that, you had mentioned something about like possibly putting an image or thumbnail or whatever. Yeah, I would just, as many as you can. I think that's probably the best.
Images are better.
Yeah, I mean, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are just my thoughts. So.
Go ahead, Brian.
Where's the public meetings? Is it under government? Is it, if you go to the homepage, where is that?
The meeting calendar will be available here with that button. As a note.
So is this the homepage?
This is, the middle of the homepage.
It's a middle page.
Okay.
Maybe it might make more sense if I go back here. So this is it all put together.
Oh, I see, okay.
So, and as a note on meetings, so phase 2 of the public engagement platform will get into meeting management. So there's a lot more to come.
Okay.
Meetings. When this launches, for phase 1, it might be a little, maybe
Sure.
it's still going to have a calendar, it's still going to have agendas, minutes, and stuff.
Zoom link will be on there?
Right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it'll function similar, maybe it'll function similar to the way we're doing it now. It's still basic, it's when we put in the
Sure.
And Penny, if I can just insert a quick comment there. I'm going to be including a link for the workshop to the Naperville, to one of their city council meetings, and they actually use this exact platform right now. So you can see how that functionality will play out, because their agenda is sort of tied to their videos. So you can click on agenda items and it links you to that specific point in the video as well. So when I include that link next week, just play around with that a little bit, because they're using the platform that we will.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yep. Thank you. Penny, you had mentioned on one of the slides some additional features that could happen, like crime or roads that are closed, et cetera. We get updated every day on fire and police calls, which is a good thing. And I'm not suggesting you have to go that way with this site. I guess the question is, how real time will it be? Will it be updated every single day? I mean, is it automated, a lot of it, or will somebody have to literally put this in place? So I guess I want it to be up to date as much as possible, obviously. So how do you get there?
Well, so to clarify, this was the community's wish list.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So these are not things we are necessarily going to implement.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, one of the top tasks is transparency. So it's going to be an open data portal. And at first, it's going to be, minimal data sets that are out there until we sort of build up a library. But we'll have information out there that would be very current, either real time or as, we can do a nightly refresh of the data. So it'll be very current. Again, Naperville, they've got a really nice open data portal out there if you want to kind of get an idea of sort of where we're headed.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
First point is kind of bridging off what David's doing, because giving notice is important to us. When we have, the mitigate events, it just struck me. I was like, I want to make sure that everybody, it's really easy to see, our meetings and events, and then also public notices too. Because we have a lot of requirement, and we are starting to rely more and more on this for supplying public notice. So that was actually a great point. I wanted to echo that, realizing that we're giving notice for things pretty formally. The second is just a question. Is there any opportunity are you seeing use of AI in any of these things? Because I know in me scrolling around, sometimes I get to something in our site, and I look back and try and find it, and I can't find it because there's a lot of different ways to go through, or even looking up things in the code. So, is that out there yet?
We're thinking about it.
It would be very helpful if it's not terribly expensive.
We're going to be creating a pilot that may or may not become law, depending on how it actually turns out. So we are in the upcoming year going to do an AI pilot, like chat.
Yeah, where you can put it.
It's going to become public.
Right. So I was just curious about that, because I didn't know where that's at, but that would be pretty awesome.
And then your first point about knowing about meetings and
notices.
public minutes. So part of our communication platform, those could be topics that people subscribe to. I want to know every time there's a notice, or I want to know when the next council meeting is, when the agenda. So you can go there and subscribe to those, and then that just happens automatically. Just push it.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. So if I want to get a building permit, I would go to the online forms, right?
So
I mean, potentially, that's, let me clarify that. Okay. So if I can fill it out online, correct, is what the proposal is. I'm just saying, what I'm asking is like in the future here.
So that is a little bit of a gray area. Just the city uses city for new development and permitting. There's a separate but related project to implement that for that point. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. So at that point, they'll have online forms for permits and things. But it's a separate but related project, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that may be in the foreseeable future?
Yes.
Okay. So then, when you fill out a building permit, there is a fee involved.
Mm-hmm.
You can pay that if you do it online. If you do it online, can you pay it?
For building permits, yes, they'll be paying, actually for both. So
Okay.
Building permits will be through our City View portal. Other things like maybe, I don't know, a parade or, a fee for a parade or some
Anything
other
involves a fee.
topic. Where we build the form through this function, that also can take payment.
How would you make payment? Would that be by credit card only?
A credit.
Or e-check?
It's similar to the formats that are used now for utility billing. So credit cards, debit cards, electronic checks.
You can electronic check and avoid the fee for the credit card, correct?
That's not my call.
No, I understand that. Is that what it is now then? Do you know?
Well, for utility billing, it's the same fee, I believe.
Even for an e-check?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. But if you came down and and you printed out the PDF form and gave to them, you could pay by check and there'd be no fee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Jamie, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for this. So you mentioned that one of the goals is to make it quick and easy to find things because the current search yields too much when you put in search criteria. And you talked about how the staff would put in tags as they add content. Is that the sole way that it is pulling the appropriate content? Is it relying on the tags?
Well, it's using the tags, but it's also using the content of the piece that you're looking at.
Because I guess what I'm getting at is there going to be ongoing and appropriate training for the staff who are posting information to make sure that they are tagging things appropriately to continually make sure that the results of those searches are coming back with the right types of data.
That's a good point. One of the things we liked about Granicus was it is so robust and it does have ongoing training. Every month I get an email with a list of training that's coming up in that month, and it's all included in our subscription. So it's certainly there and usable by our staff.
Okay. And then I noticed you showed the mobile version of what that looks like. That's not an app though, right? That's just the mobile page?
Right.
Okay, so there is no associated app per se for accessing any of this?
Not for the city's website, no.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, just a question, and great, thank you, Penny, for all this work. So with all this changing of platforms, is there any way to, with the utility billing portal that's coming out, supposedly in February, would there be a way here to connect directly through the new city website as opposed to having two different lookups for, I'm going to the customer portal to pay my utility bill, could I not get that from the city's main website?
Well, it's actually probably going to functions similarly. So, if you, let me see if I can find that.
If you could connect the two, just say somebody's looking to pay their utility bill, they go to one site, I go to the city of St. Charles.org or whatever it happens to be. There's a link, much like we had talked about earlier about One for Business. Could there be a link directly to the new utility customer portal?
Well, so there is the online payments, okay? So that will take them to a section, because we take other online payments.
Right, no,
you know,
correct,
so,
right.
So it'll take them to a section that says, you know, which payment do you want to make? Do you want to pay a parking ticket? Do you want to pay utility billing? You know, a utility bill? But they are separate applications. Technically, when you pay a utility bill, you're going, you know, one way, and when you're paying a parking ticket, you're going another way.
Right.
I don't
So
know
I'm just looking at both of them kind of hitting at the same time. Maybe just transparency to all of our residents that use that online portal, the customer portal currently that's going away. How could we link that and make it much like your question about making it easy for people to access it? Is maybe it would be on that pay a bill, and utility might be one of the first options.
Right, exactly, exactly, yes.
That way, one click and somebody's just looking at one site, and back if they're going to their mobile and looking at it there, to be able to find one and be able to pop right to pay their utility bill.
Yeah, so like in this example, you know, if they choose pay, it would be, you know, do I want to pay a parking ticket? Do I want to pay my utility bill?
Okay.
We don't have a separate water bill, but whatever there is to pay.
Correct. Right. That's what I'm looking for, is just one spot for people to go to get the option, again, the usability of the drop down as opposed to a different website to go pay your utility bill as opposed to this. So no, thank you for that.
All right,
thanks. Thank you.
Any more questions up here? No? Penny, do you feel like you got some good feedback from us?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
All righty. Penny, are you presenting the next one, or is Larry?
Not me.
Not you. All right, next up, item 6B. Larry's going to make a presentation regarding a possibility of a purchase of a Panasonic Toughbook laptop.
Thank you, Chairperson Weber. So the recommendation tonight is to purchase 25 Panasonic Toughbooks for police squad cars. And the reason why we're purchasing them is to replace our existing fleet of 25 Toughbooks, which are over 6 years old. They need to be replaced. So the Panasonic Toughbook is so-called ruggedized Toughbook. So it's different than a regular laptop. It has is built to be more resilient, handles the tough environmental and operating conditions that are out in the field and that are in our police squad cars. And the Toughbook itself, because it's been so well received and so efficient, it's become our standard here as well as the standard for many police agencies and law enforcement agencies around the country. And we're proposing to use the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement to purchase the Toughbooks, and through CDS Office Technologies. CDS Office Technologies is an authorized reseller on the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. So with that, I'll take any questions.
So we should expect to see 6 years out of the life of these $3,500 laptops, right?
Actually, we're going beyond their useful life. It's a 5-year replacement. So this has gone beyond our normal. So you expect 5 years from now, we should be bringing a similar recommendation back.
And we have consulted with Chief or the Force to see this has functioned very well.
Absolutely.
What they want.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So is this the next version or the next upgrade of the Toughbooks they're currently using, Larry? We're just getting the next 6 years newer technology?
Exactly. It's better technology, and it's even less expensive than the last ones we purchased. So it shows you the value of technology now. It's better and cheaper.
Great. Thank you.
Paul?
So it's budgeted for 80, and we're at 87. It's not a huge amount over, but what was the cause of being over budget on the purchase?
Yeah, so we're using our equipment replacement fund. So we have a reserve, so we're just going to take more from the reserve. So the budget was more of an estimate than it was actual hard dollar figure we put into funds for this year. So we estimated, we believe we would be about 80,000, end up being a little more, but we just will pull that from our existing reserves.
Same number of units?
Yes.
That we were expecting, maybe a little bit difference in price?
Exactly.
Okay, same number.
Yep.
Then I'd look for a
Move for
motion
approval.
and a second. Moved by Ryan, seconded by Petrillo.
Just a question.
Question?
Yes, please, thank you. What happened to the old computers?
If you recall, a few months ago, we had an ordinance to be able to allow us to recycle and
Okay, I remember that, yeah, okay, so.
Yeah, so
Do you think we would sell these, or do you think we would destroy them because of the
sometimes there's
data
a market,
there?
sometimes an aftermarket for these. So the ordinance gives us the opportunity to do that. In the past, we have had, there's some organizations, smaller rural fire departments and police departments, sometimes have asked for these. We don't have particularly anybody who's asked for these right now, but that is a possibility. Given that they're 6 years old, they may be kind of past their useful life.
If you were to resell them, what would you do with the memory? Would you completely erase it and?
Yeah, that's part of when we do the recycling, that's part of their task is to ensure there's an actual process that ensures that those devices are unreadable, unusable.
Right, that's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually through a specification from the Department of Defense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So we have a motion by Ryan and a second by David. Roll call, please.
Wirball?
Yes.
Besner?
Yes.
Skatis?
Yes.
Foltz?
Yes.
Bonfard?
Yes.
Munns?
Yes.
Gem?
Yes.
Zencioni?
Yes.
Petrella?
Yes.
All right, great. That motion carries. Thank you very much, Larry. Next up, we have item 7B. Chief Keegan is going to make a presentation regarding the closure of Route 64 and 31 for the St. Patty's Day Parade.
Yep, this is a repeat event. Nothing's really changed from previous years. The information is outlined in your packet. The parade will take place on Saturday, March 9th. With that, I can answer any questions you might have, and the Alliance is also here.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Lencioni, seconded by Petrilla. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Chief. Next up, we have public comment. Nobody here for public comment. Any other additional items from mayor, council, or staff?
Yeah, I got one more. And I probably should have mentioned it at the last meeting, but, Peter to Public Works in your department, wonderful job clearing the snow over the weekend with the snow drifts, with the wind. I got a lot of positive comments about the way your drivers drove, the way they came around and cleared. I know that was a heavy task from Friday through the weekend, especially with the wind chill. So to you and your department, well done.
Yep, well done, Peter. And to the contractors that do cul-de-sac.
All right. I know we have executive session today, so I'm looking for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Go into. Moved by Wirball, seconded by Gem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All righty.